All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast as we get to our second episode in this season's summer series, Ben. And today is a ripper. We are talking to a property investor that has a multi-property portfolio. And we also talk about how a move to a gold mining town changed everything for this couple. But what else do we cover, Ben?
Well, that's right, Bryce. This story has themes around sacrifice, delayed gratification, and to your point, basically moving and getting out of your comfort zone in terms of what you're trying to achieve. It is a ripper tale, and I can't wait to unpack it.
It is a ripper tale, Ben, so let's rip into the show.
Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, we've got another very special guest today on this edition of the Summer Series podcast, Ben. We are talking to a podcast listener. Her name is Amy Hemblin. Welcome to the Property Couch, Amy.
Thanks, boys. Lovely to be here.
Oh, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks very much. Long-time listener, we understand.
Yeah, since the beginning, you guys have been in my ears. So, yeah, almost 9 years. So, yeah, a lot of education, a lot of knowledge along the way. So, thank you. Thank you for all the value you've added in my life.
Oh, thank you for coming on today and sharing your story. Now, me and Stiggy have been conspiring in the background. We said we wanted more ladies to put their hands up, so I just want to be shout out and say thank you for coming. First of all, listening for that long, and secondly for coming and sharing your story. But there's a whole bunch of stuff we want to learn about you. But if you've been listening for 9 years, you know what the next question is that is about to come out of my mouth, and it's along the lines of tell us a bit about growing up, money conversations. Were there any conversations over the dinner table with you?
Look, there were in our house, actually. It was pretty freely spoken about. My parents have always been small business owners, mostly cafes and restaurants over the years. Up in northern New South Wales here, a little town called Lennox Head I grew up in on the coast. And, we chatted a lot about money. I think when your parents own small businesses, you sort of live and breathe that lifestyle with them. So a lot of time in the restaurants. I remember from the earliest ages, Dad used to let me count the takings as well. So, at the end of the day, I was a kid that loved maths. So at the end of the day, I could sit there and count the takings and balance the tills and sit there with all the money. And, this was mid-90s when, there was a lot of cash around. So I got to see it,
What impact did you think that had on you then, having those conversations and your understanding of money at that early age?
Well, I think at the time I didn't think anything of it because that was my normal, like sitting there with all this money. That was my normal, But I guess looking back now as an adult, it probably had a lot of influence on me, seeing it, believing it, and knowing that you put your head down, you work hard enough, it's there if you want it.
That's a powerful, sort of tangible way in which you've been able to develop out, good money habits. And so obviously the next logical question for me is how did that mature as you were sort of getting more and more exposure to the opportunity to make money for yourself?
Yeah, well, I guess it's just myself and my sister. And I guess, it could have gone either way, seeing that money. There could have been sort of an entitlement to money. But I think my sister and I, have always been good with money and made good money decisions. And I think, my parents taught us how to fish, and it wasn't like money was growing on trees, but we were in the businesses with them. We saw how hard they worked. So, we knew that, it wasn't growing on trees. It was actually coming from hard work. So we just knew that if we had, a good work ethic and made good decisions in our life, that we could have the same things.
What about investing then? If your parents were small business owners, I think you said restaurants there, and you're getting exposed to this, was there other investments outside of their businesses that they were involved in? And if so, did they talk to you about those?
Look, not really. I think Mum and Dad both came from very humble beginnings. They both didn't finish high school. They started their businesses quite young, had us quite young, and was just like hard work, and they didn't really... I think there were opportunities along the way, to get like a commercial freehold of the business they were in, and it was always just maybe a little bit out of reach, or, it was talked about, but it was sort of more about that family home We grew up in like a little 2-bedroom beach shack at the beginning, and then there was like an extensive renovation that they sort of went through. I remember in primary school, and we had this like quite big house after that. And but yeah, the investing journey a little bit more later in life now, but not so much back then. I think it was more just about paying the home off and working hard, but also having like a lot of experiences as well. We had a lot of holidays growing up, and a lot of hard work, but then fun as well.
So, Amy, you've been listening for a long time, been pretty much with us for the 9 years or so that we've been going on. I asked this question in a lot of the summer series. You're exposed to the same thing your sister was exposed to. Did you both go on a similar course in terms of understanding the value of money and that money could work for you if you worked for it?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've been on a bit of a similar path. Both, saw how hard our parents worked in business, so both went and got a tertiary education, sort of went down a different path. But definitely, I think she and I, sort of the same, different type of investing routes. Her and her husband have sort of more gone down the shares path, and myself and my wife more property. But I think we're all heading in the same direction.
And with Samantha, in terms of her situation, was it similar for her? I mean, have you guys had that conversation about what money was growing up like for your wife?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, her family's from England, so they came here in the early 80s, and same sort of thing, hard workers, more of a scarcity mindset probably in the background from her parents, from where they've come from. But definitely same sort of path there, same values,
Yeah, great.
Well, you and your wife have 3 kids, and they're sort of early age toddlers. So are there any conversations around money for, say, your 5-year-old, or is it still a little early for you?
Yeah, we're starting to. I mean, we tell them how we have these houses, and like people give us money, or we say $1 because they're Bluey fans. But people give us the $1. We give it back to the bank right now, but in the future, we'll be getting that money. But we go down to the local farmers markets on a Sunday, and they take their little cash down because our little banana man's cash only, and trying to get that sort of giving cash and counting change going on with the 5-year-old. But because there's not many opportunities to sort of get cash out and pay cash these days. Like, I learn a lot just by counting change and, seeing real money. So I think you're still trying to establish that in kids, even though it's not a lot of it around anymore.
Yeah, well, you would have seen a few months ago or last month or so, a lot of Optus people would have worked out, small business owners, how to get cash into their little cafes at that time as well.
Cash is king.
Back. Yeah, can be king, all right. Hey, I want to then sort of understand from that, really, I mean, that's good foundations, right? So we're building on good foundations. I've got notes here, hard work, effort. Those small business operators, they do it tough in this country, but you learn a lot. Like, you take a lot of gravity away from that sort of thing. So how did that sort of then manifest into your young adulthood, and then how you were sort of looking after your money?
Yeah, I think when I left high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I sort of spent a few years I really wanted to travel. My parents, they exposed us to lots of holidays and travel. So I really wanted to travel. Yep. And I left and I went overseas to America and worked at a summer camp over there, and lived in a few different places, traveled around. I wanted to get out there and see the world. So I think in my head it was kind of like, I'll save money when I find out what I want to do, finish my qualifications, start working full-time in a real job. That's when I'll start saving and investing. So we didn't buy our first property till I was 27. So it's not like we started super early. It's just that, I knew it was always going to happen at some point, but I didn't want to miss out on that experiences in my 20s, traveling, staying at backpackers, the things I don't want to do now in my late 30s, with kids.
So you leaned in on those experiences, but what was money movements like as you were traveling and you're getting your first job, and sort of drawing on the experiences you had with your parents, seeing what that looked like, and every money counts? What were you said you didn't want to invest or buy your first property till later, but were you still careful, or did you let it all go?
Careful. Yeah, still careful. There was always, my sister and I both had, part-time jobs from 14 and 9 months. We sort of saved our money, and, I would spend that on more experiences rather than things. But we'd sort of save money, and then that would be for traveling or whatever. So I've always been kind of safe with money, I guess you could say.
And then in terms of looking at your current situation, do you use the sort of more platform or the Money Smart system as part of sort of organising your money?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's developed over time. We definitely use the more platform on the mobile. But the Money Smarts, I think back since, before you guys, when I used to read Scott Pape's books, it was the JAR systems and that Money Smarts and just getting that right. So I think when we were sort of saving for our first deposit, it was, that high interest savings account, and just sort of had it set up pretty well from the beginning, I guess, an offset account when we got our first home, and that's where we got paid into, and tried to keep it pretty simple, really.
There's a big story here, right? Because now this is the pivot for me in terms of, in reading some of the brief notes that we've got on your backstory, you had to make a pretty big sacrifice to get into that sort of property space. So tell us that story. I mean, because you're someone in your 30s, obviously 3 young kids, wife, you needed to save a deposit to get onto the property ladder. So tell us the journey, because that is by far the hardest thing these days for those budding property people who want to acquire a property. Tell us about the journey to saving that deposit and how you potentially fast track that story.
Yeah, so Sam and I were living in Newcastle back when I finished uni, and I was looking around at new grad positions, and I was in Newcastle, I could get a local job there at a private practice. They were offering a salary of 45,000, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll just have a look around. And there was a job going with WA Country Health, and they had multiple positions, and it was a $57,000 starting salary. I thought, oh, this is better than the local place, so I thought I'll apply and see what happens. And I got offered a job, and job offer came through, and it said Kalgoorlie Goldfields, and I didn't know where that was. Like, for someone on the east coast, WA's Broome, Perth, and maybe Margaret River. So I had to get the map out, have a look, and there it was, nowhere near the beach where I grew up. So I was like, oh no. So I had to break the news to Sam. We were off to Kalgoorlie in WA, and it was a fantastic year. It was character building. We saved a deposit for our house, and the plane landed, and I started crying. And she said, "What are you doing crying? Like, we're here for your job." She hadn't started her nursing career yet, so she was sort of there sacrificing a year, like delaying a year of getting started on her career. And she said, "I'll go for a year." And a year to the day, she was leaving with or without me, and I was, wise enough to know that relationships is more important than money. So yeah, I was out of there after a year too. But yeah, it was a great experience.
So describe to people who have never been to Kalgoorlie what the vast difference looks like for someone who's grown up on the coast and then you land in Kalgoorlie.
Yeah, well, nothing's very green over there. We arrived in January, so it's middle of summer and it's dry. And there's these people walking around with all these hats on with like these fly net things over the face. And what's that about? But obviously there's so many flies and it's so dry, you're just keeping the flies out of your eyes. I don't know. But yeah, there wasn't any grass. The supermarkets didn't open on Sunday. I don't know if they do now, but wasn't much open, wasn't much there. Like biggest open cut gold mine in Australia. Like, it was pretty cool. Like, it was different. And we just thought, we both travelled, so we were open to new experiences. So we were there for, a reason. But it was like lots of transient people there, lots of young professionals from Perth, teaching, emergency services. So it was a good atmosphere for us. I worked at the local hospital, which was eye-opening, and yeah.
Did you make the trek to Perth and the coastline at certain times, or did you spend most of the year in Kalgoorlie?
Yeah, so we spent most of the year there. We did weekends down to Esperance, so that was our closest coast. I think it was, can't remember now, maybe 3.5 hour drive, but beautiful coastline down south there. We had some family in Margaret River, so we did go to Margaret River for Christmas, and we did do a trip to Bali in the middle of the year, because that's what you do when you're in Perth. So we had a few little holidays there. But I guess that's where the real interest in property and finance and money came, because it wasn't much to do in Kalgoorlie. And, so I just really read a lot of books, API magazine, like anything, Noel Whittaker, Paul Clitheroe, Scott Pape. I was just really sort of pre-podcast times back in 2010. So I really just read a lot of books and really educated myself on, what our next step was going to be after we'd started to save that money.
Where do you think that hunger came from, Amy? Because you obviously seen exposed to small business with your folks, but you're a voracious reader by the sounds of that list that you just rattled off. And as you say, it was pre-podcast at those times. So what was the spark? Was there a mentor? Was there a spark? Was it what got you?
No.
What got you in that mindset?
I'm not sure. Yeah, no mentor, no. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I just sort of thought, right now we're really saving some money. Now we're going to be, saving, investing for our future. Like, now that I could really actually see the money in the bank account, I was like, now we can sort of move forward. But yeah, I don't know where it came from. I think just knowing that, I think I didn't want to go down that business ownership path like my parents, because I saw how hard they worked and all the sacrifices they made for us. And I thought, I need to invest in a different way. And I think, from all my reading, property was the answer, like not shares. I don't want, I follow a lot of the FIRE stuff, but I think with shares, you've got to work a lot and save a lot to, get ahead that way. So property and the leverage was what made most sense to me at the time.
Do you think that that the Kalgoorlie posting was helpful in saving for that deposit? Because imagine if you had the posting in Margaret River or somewhere where spending the money was a bit easier.
Yeah, that's right, definitely. Not much to spend your money on out there. We'd have friends come visit us, and like the only activity we could do would be like we'd take them to the super pit, show them the super pit, or we'd go. You could do tours into. I'm allowed to say this, but you could do tours of the brothels in Kalgoorlie in the daytime. So when we had friends come visit, that was what we did. We went and toured the brothels, took them to the super pit, and that was pretty much it. So not much to spend your money on. You can see how people that move there and work in the mines, spend a lot of money at the pubs and things like that. But yeah, we saved.
Doesn't the National Geographic shows the gold hunters or something like that, the nugget hunters or something like that? That's filmed around that particular area. So did any of your friends come over with their gold detectors and want to go out and stake the ground and see if they could find their riches?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. No, I don't know. But completely different world. Like this country is so vast. It's so cool. There's so many places to see it. I can't wait to just do more travelling with the kids and get out there and show them this beautiful country.
Well, I'm disappointed I didn't go. I drove from Torquay to Perth last Christmas, and I was planning to go into Kalgoorlie to check it out and see the super pit. And I decided to press on and do the drive in 3 days rather than 4. But I'm kind of still a bit.
Well, the characters and the people you get to meet, it's just these places are magical. I mean,
so much character.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, all right, let's move into we walk out of there. We have a wonderful experience. We've taken a good chunk of that deposit. So, what are we thinking? Are we thinking first owner-occupied home, or do we want to start investing at first? Or when are the children's plans coming? Tell us a bit about the consideration you had around the sequencing and the order in which you wanted to put things in.
Sure. I think for us, I can see now reinvesting is a strategy for some people, but I think for us, we were moving back to the East Coast to kind of a small coastal town, so the rent was similar to mortgage repayments. So for us, it made sense to buy the first owner-occupier because it's not like we were renting in an expensive place in the city sort of thing. So for us, it made sense to just use that. We had $50,000 saved after a year, and we used that to buy our first place that was $381,000 here in East Ballina. And we thought we were clever to negotiate $1,000 off that because the hot water system looked like it had been there since 1980, and then when we got the power on, it works, and we got another 7 years out of that. So, that was good. So 380 was that purchase price. And I remember at the time asking to mum and dad if they wanted to guarantee our loan, and they said no. And I was a bit surprised, like, why wouldn't you do that? It's not costing you anything. And then so I remember that $4,000 of LMI going onto our mortgage actually, and I remember thinking, that's a lesson you taught me there. I remember it still now, and
Have you revisited that with your folks now that you've got a portfolio and they thought maybe we should have looked after you, darling, and you knew what you were doing, or did they just not think that you knew what you were doing?
Dad doesn't feel sorry for us, no. No, not at all. We got our first land tax bill this year.
Welcome. Welcome to the club.
So so he definitely doesn't feel sorry for us.
Okay, so you buy that first one in East Ballina. Tell us, did you do anything to it? Was there any renovations? Was it as is? What was the next step for that one?
Yeah. Look, it's a 3x2x1 brick and tile 1980 build. Very basic, still basic to this day. It's got a orange laminate kitchen bench top with the chipboard falling off underneath. The kids call it the Wheat Bix. And every one of our investment properties is nicer than our own home. But we're delaying that gratification. It's going to be potentially the last big rock in the jar is the knockdown rebuild of our own home. So that's in the future. But while the kids are young, we've got a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. Everyone's not toilet trained. There's textures and crayons everywhere, and I think that's okay now because it's 1980 original.
Yeah, super smart. So so you got that one, and then what happens next? What was the next purchase look like?
Yeah, so based on everything you guys say, the next one, we made a lot of mistakes in the book, even though I'd been reading and learning for a while. The next one, we made the mistakes, but I kind of justified it the whole way through. So the next one, we buy a block of land in 2015 locally. So, you don't invest in your own backyard and you buy established, which we didn't do. So I justified the land buying part because it was coastal infill land, not greenfield city land. So I was like, tick that box. And then the other thing we did was we invested locally, and property's been very kind to us. Like, we have been lucky. We're 15 minutes south of Byron Bay, so biggest capital growth city town in the whole country the last 10 years. So that's just been very lucky for us. So we believe property's been very kind to us. And the third mistake we made was we used the deposit for the land of our money in our offset account instead of releasing equity from our property. So we fixed all that up by construction stage and sort of did all that properly. But yeah, that was a lot of mistakes there, but it's turned out to be our best asset. So we bought the land, took a while to settle. We decided to build a house with an attached granny flat because we thought, let's spend an extra $100,000 to put the granny flat on to get that extra 15% rental yield. So that's been our best performing asset by far. And yeah, we were so grateful that we did that.
Well, it's not a mistake, is it? I mean, ultimately, I know that's been kind to sort of say not what we recommend traditionally in terms of the conversations we have on the podcast. But there must have been something that you were feeling around what was going on in that area, or was it sluggish for a while and then took off? I mean, take us through the buying decision of buying that vacant land in that area. Were you confident that there was going to be this rush towards the coastline, in the whole sort of Byron hinterland area and what goes on?
I don't know. I mean, I grew up in the area, so I think you're always a bit biased to where you grow up. But I, travelled around the world and travelled across the other side of the country, and you do see a few places, and you realise it's pretty special here. Like a lot of people want to move here, a lot of people travel here, and obviously it had that COVID boost of lifestyle. That this was pre-COVID, but I mean, I always thought it was a gun place to be.
Well, yeah, I mean, so ultimately you've been able to do your research, predict the area, put new improvements on the land, but obviously 2 improvements, granny flat as well, to give you that higher income. So I don't think you should be calling it a mistake. Sure, the cash out of the offset account to pay the deposit wasn't the right move, but on the whole, it's a pretty good acquisition.
Yeah, like we've been it's funny, you read all the books and you know all the things you're supposed to do, but it's not until you do things in practice where you get your real learnings, I think. And I knew that wasn't the right thing to do, but for some reason, I don't know, we didn't have a mortgage broker at the time. We sort of got a mortgage broker after that, but it's like you read stuff and you reinforce it and you know it, but in practice it's very, very different.
Amy, where did the seed get planted for the granny flat? Had you seen someone else do it? Was it part of your reading? Was there someone precedent next door? What was the spark?
Yeah, I think done some just from reading books and listening to other people's stories. I think in the magazines. I think that's where it sort of came from. And I think we weren't putting a granny flat in the backyard of an established house with sort of unknown costs of water and electricity and all that. We were like, let's do it from the setup. But we went to a few project builders and they were like, no, we can't do that. The firewall's too expensive. Or no, we can't do that. That's not one of our normal designs. So it took me a few builders, like a project builder, to say, yeah, we can do that for you on this block and make it work. I knew it could work, and I'd done a lot of research around, if we stay within the parameters of not making the granny flat over 60 square metres, we can not pay council contribution fees. And, I sort of did my research, what we could rent it for, and it all made sense. I just had to sort of get it across the line with a builder that was prepared to do it.
Mm. So we've gone from Kalgoorlie to East Ballina, then we buy a block of land and we add some value to it, so it improves the yield. What do you do next after that?
So as soon as it was finished, we got it valued. We with the land and the build all that, we were in for sort of 580, and then we got it valued and it came back at 810. So we were ready to go again with that equity release. We were also ready to start a family then too. So it was like, quick, let's get the next one before anyone knows I'm pregnant. And get that across the line. But I think we were very lucky. We had sort of 8 years pre-kids to be that double income, no kids family, where we had that earnings, where we could sort of put a few big rocks in the jar before we started having a family. And I think being 2 girls, we obviously had to pick up the phone and make a call to the fertility clinic to start the process. So we knew that it was like investing. It was a conscious decision. We had to do that. It wasn't just accidental babies getting in the way of our plans. So we sort of, and it was also an unknown cost. We didn't know if that was going to cost us 10 grand or 100 grand. So we were just like, we'll put that aside until we get a few big rocks of investing in the jar, and then we'll be able to go down that family formation path after that. So yeah, pretty quickly the next step was getting another property, and sort of kept reading and listening to you guys. And I think the next stage we got a buyer's agent who was a member of Pippa. So that was our next step, and we went and bought a property with him up in suburb called Ferny Hills in Brisbane.
So talk us through that, the thought of going borderless and going outside of something that you knew really well, and then trusting someone else to do that on your behalf. Tell us through talk us through the journey for that.
Yeah. Well, I guess being near the border, it's interstate, but it's only 2 hours away from here. So
Yeah.
closest capital city, a lot closer than Sydney for us. But yeah, look, I think we were happy to use. I'd done enough research at the time. We were happy to sort of, get a buyer's agent and put our faith in him based on what we'd learnt along the way. And we sort of knew we were prepared to have, because our first property had been quite cash flow positive, we were prepared to sort of get in a bit closer to the city and be a bit negative to sort of balance out that portfolio. We could handle a little bit of sort of negative gearing on that one because our first one was so positive geared. So we were sort of aiming for that real growth asset up in Brisbane, 12 kilometres from the city.
And so take us through what we paid for that one.
So that was $560,000. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, double carport house on over 800 square metres. Nice big corner block in a nice leafy suburb, like lots of old Queenslanders. Really family friendly. Owner occupier over 80%. Like ticked all the boxes basically from like all my learnings of what we needed to do there. So that's been a bit sluggish with its rent because it was negatively geared, but post COVID and things, it's sort of caught up now. But I can see how if you start with that kind of investment property and you're not prepared for the negative cash flow, you can really have a negative mindset about property investing and what's going on here and not seeing that growth for a few years. I can see how people can really, the order and the pairing and what you do, I can really see how it can get you down and not get those rewards. And you can really see why people sell out after a few years because you're not getting that sort of reinforcement that you're heading in the right direction.
So fast forward to today now, and sort of roughly what's the value of that property?
It's valued about $900,000 that one, and we get $700 a week rent. So we're pretty.
So it's gone up
pretty
from what was the original $560. Yeah, and so that's going well. The difference between the two processes, one is your first purchase was very hands-on, wasn't it? Like ultimately you've done a lot of work. You've people told you no, can't be done. You've had to find the builder to get it done. You've had to project manage that process. Now that's been manageable, but in doing so, you've turned apple into apple pie and got a really great result. But it hasn't been, that really wasn't passive. The trade-off for the second one is you've gone, the other way, which is a lot more passive. But to your point, it hasn't necessarily manufactured the equity yet. It's just a set and forget and hold. Do you have an opinion on each of those experiences in terms of, the appetite to do it again?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously with the build, it was probably a 2-year process by the time you buy the land and the land settling and then building the property. So that it's the opportunity cost, I guess, of being in a development as opposed to like just getting a buyer's agent and getting it done straight away. So yeah, look, they both have their advantages, but yeah.
Yep, I think that's a fair assessment. So we go from 2, and then is that when the first child arrives?
Yes. I was pregnant then. Actually, we bought that in November, and we had our first son in March. So I was definitely looking pregnant at the mortgage brokers there. So we had to sort of get that one across the line, and then then I had a year off when we had our first son. So yeah, things kind of slowed down a bit then.
Beautiful.
Who's the driver here, Amy? Out of clearly you are, but how on board is Samantha in terms of the discussions? Is there an equal conversation piece, or are you leaning in more?
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning in more. I mean, she's not listening to property podcasts like I am. She's got other interests, but yeah, we both share values, same morals. We're heading in the same direction, so she knows how passionate I am about it and how much reading and learning I've done on it. So she's pretty much happy to trust my judgment on where we're heading and what we're doing.
What about when you say, oh, look, this one here, instead of us doing it, we're going to engage a buyer's agent to do it on our behalf? How did that conversation go?
Yeah, well, obviously it's an outlay of money that, is like, oh, why are we doing that? So I guess just explaining it and the benefits of it and, why we're doing it. And, all those little percentages you talk about, like 1% difference in capital growth over 30 years, the buyer's agent fee is insignificant, isn't it? So it's just sort of having a long-term view, I guess, of the whole process and the whole picture.
Well, I think super smart, and I think, you've been able to demonstrate that. So we have a little bit of time off. We have the first son, and then we've got a 3-year-old and now a 1-year-old. So, but there's also another acquisition. I'm looking at my screen here. So there's another acquisition also locally as well, by the looks of it.
Yeah, so we went we did another build, but this time we did a joint venture with my parents. So I was the project manager, and Mum and Dad provided the deposits on that one to be paid back. But I think we had a 1-year-old, or maybe I was still on maternity leave. Maybe Sam was pregnant with our second child, so we had a servicing issue on our end. But we also had the skills of the project management to help them out, so it was a real team effort there. So we bought another block of land, and we built a duplex this time in Lennox Head as well.
Fantastic. So duplex for obviously the double income. Now, that's pure investment as well. There's no opportunity for you folks living in one of them, or
well, Mum and Dad moved straight into theirs actually and lived in it for 3 years and have just recently sold it. So we rented ours out straight away. Initially, there was we thought maybe we could do this build, make 100,000, and then do some renos on our own home. That's initially why we went into it, and then COVID hit, and then the market went nuts here, and we increased our value quite a bit there, and the rent was paying the mortgage, and we sort of decided to hold it as a long-term sort of investment. Mum and Dad lived in theirs and then sold it after 3 years and have moved back to the place they were in before. But yeah, once the project was finished and all done, we separated the titles and got our own mortgages and divided everything back to normal. But yeah, we definitely needed them for the servicing at the time, and they probably needed the push from us for the build and the project management side of things from me. So it was nice.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story. I mean, and did you not, like at one point in time you said, I want to do this, but no, that's right, you didn't guarantee and save us the $4,000 on LMI. So did you get any sort of little right of reply there or something like that?
No, we didn't. It's funny, there's a little rainforest sort of area out the back where you've got 10 metres of land, and Dad wanted to pay a bit extra and put a gate out the back of his fence so we could do some gardening out the back. And since they've moved out, the tenants next door our tenants want a gate now because Dad's not mowing and maintaining out the back of their place. So now we've got to put in a gate to because the weeds are growing out the back, and Dad's not living next door anymore mowing out the back.
So, Dad, this is costing me more now, and you've taken your principal place of residence exemption and taken the cash out after 3 years of living there. Yeah, very good.
Hey, can you rewind a little bit, Amy? And because you've now got 3 properties in New South Wales, and you've got 1 in Queensland. So, when there's a conversation in Queensland about land tax that says not only will we tax you on the land you hold in Queensland, but we'll tax you on land you hold elsewhere, what was that doing to your anxiety levels before? Clearly, it's been knocked on the head. But if we rewind to the uncertainty around that, how are you feeling about that point?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of noise. I think until things are actually happening, it's easy to just ignore because every week there's something. I think the Greens this week in Brisbane are talking about rental freezes now. I think, every week there's something. So I think until it actually comes in, not going to worry about that. And there would have been a lot more people hurting a lot more than us with their portfolios all over the country if that was to come in. But it was just ridiculous policy. Like, I don't know. All the people I listened to were sort of saying it was never going to get up.
Well, it sounds like you're really pragmatic, Amy, around, you just said, not till it's done, it's done. I mean, what does it mean for you, given we've just experienced the interest rate tightening cycle that we have? How have you navigated that? Has there been any mindset shifts that you've needed to make because of that? What's the lessons that people listening to this can learn about how you navigated that?
Yeah, I think obviously all our mortgages have gone up a fair bit, but I think we've had adequate buffers in our investment properties and then buffers for our personal life too. So they're there to last, a year to 2 years, and I believe interest rates will be coming back down at some point in the next year or two. So it's okay, you just ride the wave. That's part of it, and I think right now interest rates are at the same as what they were at when we bought our first place in 2011. So it just look at the long-term averages, and that's what it is, and just have buffers, in place for when times like this happen. I think we're in a position too with our servicing where we ideally would like to have interest-only lending, but all our mortgages are on principal and interest, and it's easy to know what the right thing to do is and to say this is what I want to implement. But if we're choosing to work part-time and we don't qualify for servicing to get interest-only lending, then that's the way it is for us. So yeah, it's definitely a lot because we're on P&I with all our mortgages, but we choose to work part-time and spend time with the kids, and that's the trade-off, I guess, for that extra time is, your servicing, I guess.
I mean, it is. I mean, I think I love the way you talk about it being a trade off, because that's exactly what it is. But the trade off is quality time with your family, and like at the end of the day, um, building up a wealth base, building up some passive income, is about getting your time back, and being able to juggle that time. And because you've done such a great job of making those early sacrifices, I've got some notes. Delayed gratification, moving to Kalgoorlie, doing all of those things that you did. And you haven't really missed out on experiences. They've just been different experiences, to your point. And I think, as you get older, you'll reflect on, the different opportunities and living remotely and what that can mean for you. So, but by doing that, it's giving you the backbone to save that deposit. And of course, you've been hands-on. What you've done is you've moved your knowledge base to a high level of competency. And by doing that, you've effectively executed and taken action with a high degree of confidence. And you mentioned earlier you've made a couple of mistakes. Trust me, those mistakes are minor compared to some of the train wrecks we see, in terms of people making really bad investment mistakes. So I really, I'm really, pleased for you, and Samantha, in terms of what you've been able to put together here. I'm interested, in terms of what's the next step for you.
Yeah, I think 3 children, we're definitely done. That's definitely enough for us. I think the next step is just
Yep.
enjoying time with the children while they're young. Right now, we're both working part time, and I love your reverse engineered $2,000 a week passive income, and I've kind of reverse engineered our living expenses. This is what our life costs us right now, and say 80 grand, we're going to go and earn $1,500-$1,600 a week, and that's it right now. There's no surplus. That's what we want to do. That's our time trade off right now. We're going to spend some time with the kids, and then reassess when they're all in primary
Yep.
school the next step, which is the last big rock, which is the family home. But whether that involves selling a property or going to work for full time, both of us, to get ahead to make that happen, I'm not too sure what that looks like. But right now, that's the most important thing with us, is time with the family, time together, and yeah, that's pretty much.
So you see yourself outgrowing the current family home? Is that sort of, or just
Yeah,
modernising and updating?
yeah. Look, it's an older place, 1980. Like I said, it's a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom. Like, it's original condition. The house doesn't face the right direction on the block. Our beautiful northeast aspect, there's a big shed. Like, it's just that it just faces the wrong way. So we looked at extensive renovation, but then I think the plan is probably going to be a knockdown rebuild, potentially with an attached granny flat that we can rent out, because obviously getting a bigger mortgage with a knockdown rebuild, we don't want to sacrifice our lifestyle that we've
Yeah.
grown to enjoy. So having that rental next door becomes, as an opportunity to pay down our mortgage, and then also when our parents get old, they could possibly, or our kids, get older, there's somewhere for them to live next door in the future, and we don't need that income from the granny flat next door.
I think that's pretty logical.
The theme of our summer series this year, Amy, is what money means to you. So you've told us that that's lifestyle choices, peace of mind, time with your family, travel, because that was a big part of your backstory, work-life balance, choose what you want to do, work less, happiness, relaxation, and time for hobbies. It would appear that a lot of those actually are in place for you. It would appear that most of the things that money means to you are experiences and time rather than things. What lifestyle choices would you like to be doing at some point in the future that is outside of, making sure you're present and spending time with the kids and spending time together as a family? Is there anything in particular around lifestyle choices that you're looking forward to being able to execute on, because you started young, because you believe in delayed gratification, and because you're able to play the long game with the investing?
Yeah, I think community. I think our eldest son starts primary school very soon, and I think that whole community and giving back, and I think you get the financial sort of house in order, and you can really build on relationships and like your sense of purpose sort of in the world. And I think that's really important with our kids. The legacy piece too. We don't want to hand them a bunch of properties. We want to teach them how to fish, like my parents taught me to. And so I think it's giving them those experiences, being part of the community, like in their schools or whatever, and having that time to, be in sporting clubs and community activities. And I'm not too sure what the whole contribution piece looks like for us at this stage. But I know in the future, like if we've got the the financial freedom and the it can just something to do with that family, community, giving back at some point. I'm not sure how yet though.
The 7 grades of financial well-being, contribution being the 7th and top grade. So it sounds like you're putting enough thought and energy into it. I'm sure, that whole idea will just naturally find its feet with you in terms of what you've been able to put together, because you're a credit to yourself, you're a credit to the effort that you've put in, and you and Samantha in terms of backing yourselves to being able to do this. Bryce mentioned earlier that he wanted to get, more female representation on the summer series, and you're an absolute credit to people who are getting out there on the female side, who are making a difference and taking care of their families. And I think that's just a wonderful story, and I'm so glad that you chose to share it with the community as being a long time listener. So my final question to you is, what got you over the line in terms of wanting to tell your story for the benefit of the community?
I guess just seeing, like, with interest rates rising and the way the world is at the moment, I think a lot of people are struggling to sort of get ahead. And I think the opportunity for us to move to the other side of the country, decrease living expenses and save money, I think there's so many incentives in the country right now to, like, move out of where you are. And maybe I'm speaking to someone in Sydney or Melbourne who's just on the treadmill that just can't save any money and life's expensive. Like, there are other options, and I know that's speaking from a place of privilege, because we've done it. But I think, unless you're tied to a city, like, even if it's a young person, just for a year or two, get out and see the country, and at the very least you'll meet new people, you'll have new experiences, your family and friends will all be there when you get home. Like, get out, see the country, and potentially, like, save some money and get ahead, or even, find a new home somewhere else that's not a multi-million-dollar house. Like, we did a 2-month camping holiday earlier this year, and we went up the east coast of Australia, and we went up to Port Douglas. 3 kids got a pod on the roof of the car and put the tent on, and we just saw some amazing places. And it was hectic, but it's hectic at home with 3 kids under school age. But they had a ball, and some beautiful coastlines, some beautiful small towns, and very affordable property. And obviously everyone's job can't take them. People can't move their job all over the country, but it depends, on your profession, your industry, and what you do, of course. But if you've got no ties or no profession, like, there's so many opportunities out there to just get out of Sydney and Melbourne and have a crack.
Yeah, I think because, just reflecting on what you just said, I think the key takeaway from your story for me is just the choose your hard. Do you want to choose hard for a year where you go somewhere foreign to save up a deposit, or do you want to choose your hard staying in a built-up big city, either taking on a big mortgage at first, or not being able to get into the property market? I think it's it's a demonstration that, yes, because of that delayed gratification, because you are down the track and you are achieving great results, but that's your highlights reel. Your behind the scenes was, well, I did have to take those harder decisions back when it would have been easier to stay where you were. And so I think that's a wonderfully powerful message, and I hope that everyone hears that. And there is a couple of people that we speak to in this summer series who have a similar message to you. Is if you are prepared to do something a little bit different, you don't have to accept the narrative that getting on the property ladder is actually impossible or hard to do, or not for millennials, or whatever it is. Because it largely just comes down to a bit of sacrifice. But I think for me, the key takeaway is choose your hard. Do you want to do your hard now, or do you want to do your hard later? But at some point in time, that if you are willing to take the road less travelled, you can enjoy the things that you want to enjoy. And if we go back to what money means to you, you're actually achieving most of those things already. There's just a couple of those other things that a bit more time and a bit more growth in your portfolio achieve. So. Is that a fair key takeaway, or do you reckon there's another message that really brings it home for you?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I think it's, stepping outside your comfort zone, questioning the status quo, and, they say you get ahead by doing the opposite to what most people are doing. So if you can find a way to do that, I think there's potential to, definitely sort of get ahead. That's, for sure. I mean, even the whole working part-time thing, like, even if you're not moving into a different state, like if you've got the same job and you pay off your HECS, have a look at a tax calculator, maybe work a 9-day fortnight. You might have the same take-home pay, but balance your lifestyle a bit more. And I think Sam and I, we both enjoy our jobs and our careers, and I think that longevity of working part-time, like, we don't have a line in the sand of a retirement date. We enjoy what we do, so we're living the lifestyle by design that we want now, and we're happy to, it doesn't have to be 55 or 60 or any retirement age that it is. As long as we keep enjoying what we're doing, we'll still work a couple of days a week. So my dad always said it's about the journey, not the destination, and I think we're doing our best to, live the journey.
Oh, it's a wonderful story. It should fill everyone full of optimism. Should hopefully give people the idea that property investing is not about having 10 properties, and you can just put a few into the portfolio, get on with life, have the balance that you've talked about, and I think it's a wonderful journey. So I think that on behalf of everyone here at the Property Couch, Amy, thanks for sharing your story today.
Really appreciate your time, boys. Thank you.
Oh, Ben, another incredible story of how Amy and Samantha have navigated building a property portfolio, raising children, and again, doing it outside of capital cities.
Yeah, I mean, that sacrifice, that moving out of the comfort zone, it's all about finding a way. If you think about what Amy was telling us in terms of what you'd earn here versus moving to the other side of the country to lift that income, which means accelerated deposit for that first property. And did it tough. I think at the end of the day, they love the experience. I think they'll look back on that experience as an amazing one, but it certainly fast-tracked their particular story. And then the value add part of their story, turning the apples into apple pie, sort of again demonstrated that move. Now, what we have seen there is a lot more active approach in terms of how you're doing that. So there's always that trade-off in terms of buying something and set and forget, but being able to have the time to do that and the dedication to apply for that has resulted in what I'm talking about here is about living the journey. So she's not waiting for the destination. Both her and Samantha and the kids, hearing the story about being able to travel and have that time, a couple of months here, a couple of months there, exploring Australia and building those incredible memories and those incredible experiences for those kids. That's all because of the effort and the sacrifice that was made early on. So, I can't speak highly about the way that they've done it. Looking at their data inside the More platform, I just look at their wealth speed, the wealth clock, and the wealth tracker just basically telling us that story. Being able to see all that progress being made over the journey is just, they should remind themselves of that in any time where they might getting wobbly on interest rates and those sorts. Just jump on the More platform, have a look at that and go, you know what? This is actually playing out just as we'd liked it to play out. So a credit to Amy and obviously again, we're the beneficiary of her sharing a story to the community.
Well played, Amy. We love that you came on. We love that you answered the call out to come and share your story, yours and Samantha's story. And I love the bit about over in Western Australia, Ben, in Kalgoorlie, and just being able. I think it really rams home the message around some people who are saying, "Hey, I can't get on the property ladder." Hopefully, you'll see weaved through the theme of this summer series is you'll see people have gone, well, how do I look outside the square to make sure that I don't go, oh, well, I'm just a victim of circumstances. No. They've actually just moved and pivoted and found a way to make their circumstances allow them to get on the property ladder. So I'm excited about the stories that we got ahead of us, Ben. But Amy and by extension, Samantha, thanks for sharing your story here on the summer series, mate. But lots to come. So, mate, until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it.
Well said. See you next week, folks.